FreightWaves Today. I am Julie Vandekamp, Chief Marketing Operations Officer at Sonar, and today I am joined by the one and only Malcolm Harris, host of What the Truck. Thanks for being here with me today,
Hey,
Malcolm.
Julie. It's so good to be here on FreightWaves Today. I'm happy to be back. It's a good day.
It's always fun when you're here. I love it.
I love it too.
My relaxed, fun, enjoyable, warm day of the week. I love sitting next to Malcolm.
Well, I love being here on the show. Excited. I know Craig couldn't be here today, but we're going to have some insights from Craig, and just excited for the next 2 hours to be with each and every single one of you.
Yeah, we have a great show today. We have a great lineup of guests. We have Mark Hill, the CEO of PCS Software, Jim Mullen, the current president of Truckload Carriers Association, Andy Engardio, Managing Director of Transportation at Gallagher, and our one and only Mike Baudendistel, Head of Intermodal Solutions for Sonar, to talk about what's happening on the rails. So lots of great stuff coming up. We certainly are going to get into the headlines and talk about Amazon now being an LTL carrier a little bit later in the show for sure, as well as tomorrow's second hour of FreightWaves Today. Zach will talk about it a little bit more on the Freightonomics segment as well.
Love it.
But lots of big stuff happening in the industry. Certainly never a dull day. Every day I come in and read the headlines, and every day there's something new.
That's why we love the game, right?
I mean, really, I think that people ask, why do you get into this industry, and then why do you stay? And so I've thought about that a lot over the course of my career.
Yeah.
And I think I stay because it's seriously never dull. I am not someone who's a grinder who can do the same thing every day, day in and day out. And I think I'd be bored doing something else after being part of the logistics industry.
Yeah. I'm a young buck, according to a lot of different people. And I think the reason I love the game is because I've never had the same day twice. So I think that is something that I absolutely love about logistics and supply chain. And you guys are never going to get the same information twice. So that's a cool part about this thing, too.
Yeah, it's always evolving for sure.
Absolutely.
What else is happening?
Well, we had a good What the Truck episode today. All right, so we had Gary Cornelius, the VP of Business Development at TCW, was on the show. Talked all about the SCOTUS decision. And then we had Chuck Myers, he's representing Quarter Hill. We talked about innovation in the toll road space. And
that's
that was exciting. And then, of course, Michael Vincent. We got into a little heated discussion about some basketball. He talked about his missing guitar. I mean, there's a lot that has happened on What the Truck the last, I'd say, 48 hours.
Yeah, and basketball. So NBA Finals is still going. I don't know when the next game is.
Tonight.
It's got to be tonight.
Tonight.
Stanley Cup's going on also, right?
As well, yeah.
World Cup's about to start. There's lots of stuff happening in the sports world, too.
A lot happening. Can't miss out on it. So a lot happening here, too.
All right, so we are going to get to the headlines in the Morning Minute.
Kick things off with a massive competitive move from Amazon that could fundamentally reshape the less-than-truckload landscape. The e-commerce giant announced on Wednesday the full expansion of its LTL service beyond its previous inbound-only model to all destinations, including third-party warehouses, distribution centers, and retail stores. Amazon originally launched an LTL offering in April 2025, but it was strictly limited to inbound delivery to Amazon facilities. Now, the company is rolling out a traditional hub-and-spoke LTL network capable of moving palletized shipments between 1 to 6 pallets or 150 to 15,000 pounds anywhere nationwide at lower cost than legacy carriers. Features include next-day live pickup for orders placed by 5 p.m., same-day pickup using a drop trailer method, real-time GPS tracking, and automated appointment scheduling. Analysts have previously warned that Amazon's full-scale entry into the LTL business could significantly disrupt incumbent trucking companies like FedEx Freight, Old Dominion, and Estes. Over in the autonomous trucking sector, PepsiCo and Gatik just launched what they're calling the largest commercial driverless freight deployment to date. The multi-year strategic partnership brings fully driverless trucks into PepsiCo's consumer goods supply chain, with operations already live across Texas, Arizona, and Arkansas. Gatik's autonomous trucks currently serve around 250 retail locations for PepsiCo, including Walmart and Dollar General stores, moving freight across both highways and surface streets. These are fully driver-out trucks with no safety drivers or observers in the cab, just remote supervisors providing human oversight who never perform remote driving on public roads. The partnership began in 2022, and Gatik went driver out in June 2025, maintaining a 99% on-time track record. Looking ahead, Godik, Isuzu Motors, and NVIDIA are developing a South Carolina production facility that will begin mass-producing Level 4 autonomous trucks in the second half of 2027, with volumes projected to reach tens of thousands of trucks once production ramps up. Finally, the Trans-Pacific peak shipping season is kicking off unusually early, fueled by a front-loading frenzy ahead of new tariffs. Rate hikes and surcharges by carriers that took effect June 1st sent Asia to U.S. West Coast prices soaring 51% in the latest week to $4,836 per 40-foot equivalent unit, while East Coast prices jumped 25% to $6,336 per FEU, according to the FreightWaves Baltic Index. These spikes represent the sharpest one-week increases since sudden tariff changes spurred a June demand surge last year. The United States Trade Representative recently announced new tariffs on 60 countries it said haven't done enough to combat imports produced by forced labor, while separate Section 301 probes could hit Brazil and 16 other trading partners. The National Retail Federation has revised its estimates, moving the expected peak season to June from July a month ago, and predicts June import volumes will run 5% higher than May before cooling through September.
Joined by JP Hampstead, our former FreightWaves colleague and now senior analyst at Westborough Capital, to get his take a little bit on Amazon being a full LTL provider now. What are the markets thinking about this?
Yeah, thanks, Julie. Glad to be here. I think the markets are kind of really of two minds, and the big question about Amazon is whether this represents a kind of an intention to materially compete with national LTL carriers, or whether it's more of a kind of a internally driven asset utilization play, right? We know trucking rates are really high this year. If you've got extra trucking capacity, it might be a great time to sell some of that. And so that's really what the market is trying to figure out. There were sell-side notes from Stifel, from Stephens, from UBS that kind of downplayed the long-term reaction. We don't think we're going to get downward earnings estimates from those analysts. On the other hand, Morgan Stanley is a lot more sort of worried and cautious about the threat that Amazon, could ultimately represent. And I think they've sort of been consistent along that ever since Amazon first announced, supply chain services.
Do you think that they'll take significant market share from LTL carriers?
That's a good question. So the great thing, and if we want to think about what the markets did, right? They sold off hard. They gapped lower. They opened lower than they closed, right? They opened, I think ArcBest opened down 9%. XPO is down 6.5%. A couple of the other ones like ODFL and Saia were kind of in between there. They pop back up. What I will say, Julie, is that the key to delivering LTL service at scale is having a dense real estate footprint. That's something that will be fairly easily tracked, as opposed to kind of a truckload operation that can sort of mutate and migrate, wherever the demand is. Right now, according to most analysts' reckoning, Amazon has about 28 dedicated LTL cross-docks, which is about 10% the number of like a strong national carrier. So we don't see that as like a really, material threat to someone like Old Dominion. But that number could grow. I'll note that they didn't participate in the auction of Yellow's real estate assets at the end of 2023. So, if they do try to get into this market, and I'll say, they've got density, it looks like, in LA, in Chicago, and in the Northeast, but still, even in LA, not as many service centers as Old Dominion, right? And so if they want to try to acquire more real estate in the key freight markets, it's going to be expensive, and they've already missed what a lot of people thought was a generational opportunity to do so.
So I'm so glad you brought that up, because that was sort of one of the questions I have that I actually asked this morning that I didn't have an answer to yet. You said they have 29 cross-docks.
Yeah.
We don't know if they would likely convert any of their current real estate to be part of this hub and spoke network that they're building out.
Yeah, I mean, they've got lots of buildings at various levels of utilization, everything from, small sort of forward fulfillment centers kind of at the tip of their network to larger sortation and distribution facilities. But none of those really have that, like with the cross-dock, these are sort of like long buildings with incoming freight all hitting one side, outgoing freight on the other side, and the magic happens in the middle when you're deconsolidating and then reconsolidating and building out those loads. The real estate that they do have isn't suited to those kinds of operations. Now, I'm not saying that they can't build some sort of process to deal with that, but looking at from the outside in, it doesn't seem like those are optimized for that.
Yeah, we don't know how many dock doors they have currently, and then to your point, if they have land holdings, it would be easy to throw up cross docks at or not.
Right.
But it certainly is interesting to think about them truly migrating from only inbound LTL deliveries to building out a full LTL offering, full hub and spoke network, something that we're going to watch. You mentioned the LTL stocks were down a bit. I haven't checked this morning, but I assume over-the-road trucking company stocks continued to rise. So is there a gap there that's widening just in the short term, you think? This is a short-term blip with the news?
I think it's a short-term blip. They retraced a lot. So I mentioned that ArcBest was down 9% on the open. Last I checked, it was only down 3%. Saia was down 7.6% of the open. Now it's down about 3%. So a lot of that sort of downward movement retraced very quickly. I think it's going to be wait and see. People are going to, I think, watch Amazon's real estate really closely. And then the other thing to do is really just channel checks with, the private companies, especially, who are able to comment on this more openly. So you think of someone like Essie's Express, right?
I know, we got to get back with Web.
If they start talking about seeing Amazon in their bids, if they talk about competing against them on power lanes for them, that I think would move markets.
I guess I have a question. Just, is this in totality, we were talking about it on What the Truck this morning, is this going to be a true full service LTL type of operation versus like the actual drop trailer aspect with it too? How does that break down?
From what I understand, they have drop trailers, they're letting people, and I think a lot of that is sort of just the speed of loading and unloading in different places and not having to say dig all the way to the front of a trailer to get certain pallets off. But from what I understand, they're now delivering, the old model was, we will pick up your pallets, we'll ingest them into the Amazon network. And now they're saying, we're going to deliver these to any points that you want. Right. And so to me, that's full service LTL. They still have like a coverage network map. It's not, I don't think it's truly any destination. But yeah, no, I think that's what they're offering. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's my understanding too, which is a big change.
It is a big change. And, they've gotten into different logistics businesses at different times. They're going to run into the same sort of quandary or dilemma about, what sort of balance or priority, how do you triage between, third-party freight and in Amazon's own freight? How do they sort of allocate assets properly and swing those back and forth? I know it was really difficult for them to, they first announced getting into freight brokerage and digital freight brokerage in I think 2019, and they found out very quickly that it was kind of hard for them to bring in third-party freight, third-party origins, third-party destinations. They had a network that was very efficient and optimized, but rigid, and that didn't mesh well. So it's going to be a balancing act for Amazon, and to the extent that they just want to, get revenue on their containers. They want to utilize their carriers. They want to keep their carriers in business. I don't know how ambitious this is actually going to turn out to be.
Yeah, most definitely.
It'll certainly be interesting to watch. If you had to boil it down to sort of one key takeaway for everyone? I know you started by saying there's sort of two schools of thought on this and what the impact will be. How would you boil it down?
How would I boil it down?
Summarize what we've talked about.
Yeah, I think in the short term, not a big impact. They simply don't have the infrastructure to compete for very large national accounts in the way that the leaders of the industry do. But Amazon has, kind of an endless balance sheet. They can devote however many resources they want, and we don't really know what their calculus is at this point and what they're trying to get out of this. And so I would say it's certainly a risk, but the damage isn't here yet, and we don't think that the largest LTL carriers are going to make less money because of this, at least yet.
I think that makes a ton of sense. So the other headlines that we didn't touch on, June peak season feels like imports, particularly to the West Coast, coming from China and potentially into the East Coast, are surging a bit early with some pull ahead. Generally, we'd see that peak more in July, but rates were up, I think, more than 50% into the West Coast and 25% into the East Coast. So that'll be interesting to watch as people pull ahead, preparing for new tariffs that are being rolled out, and then autonomous trucking with Pepsi and Gatik. And I think that was pretty fascinating. Maybe we'll get into it a little bit later or on a different day. But to think about them making fully driverless deliveries, not just on highways, but they mentioned on service streets too. So insane. The world is changing.
Insane.
JP, thanks so much for chatting through this with us and giving us a little bit more insight into the markets and what's happening with Amazon. Next, we are going to be joined by Mark Hill, the CEO of PCS Software. Hi, Mark. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about PCS Software. You guys have been in the transportation management space for quite a while. How is your platform evolving, and what do you guys have going on at PCS Software?
Yeah, thanks. PCS has been around for 30 years, but really has now been reborn with the whole new technology wave that's going on out there, with the needs of our customers around the AI technologies and the capabilities. There's just a huge demand out there, and our customers are really pushing us to make sure that we're leading the way in all of this. Our over 1,000 customers utilize our platform for everything from dispatch to their back office full accounting. So we are really the business operating system for our carrier and asset-based broker customers.
Mark, what's going on, man? This is Malcolm Harris. If you can see me, I am back. I think we're back in camera. First off, I'm excited to see you formally in Dallas for, of course, your event that's going to be happening in September. I think we're going to have a great time with it. And there's one common theme that comes up when I hear PCS, and it's two words. It's total domination. Your team is a champion of that. Do you mind walking me through what exactly does that mean when it comes to total domination at PCS Software?
Yeah, Malcolm, great to see you too. And we're super excited for our user conference, and you're going to be part of it. And we have a lot of exciting things that we're going to announce in the months leading up to that. So super excited to get you there and have that time together. Domination on our part, like there is just such a huge opportunity. The customers that we have, the trucking companies, asset-based brokers, they're coming out of a really hard couple of years, and they're really looking to make sure that they're ready to take on the market, ready to really take their business back and really start to grow their businesses again. And we think that PCS is perfectly, and we've really leaned in over these down years to re-architect a lot of our platform, really lean in on some of these newer AI technologies, and most importantly, deliver the technologies that people need when they need them. And, not as an ancillary kind of add-on, something else to think about, but really as something that is core to their business, right? We have this advantage that we're embedded in all of the workflows of our customers. Like they use us from their front office, like I said, all the way to their accounting. And so we understand what skills and what tools and what capabilities we can really apply these technologies technologies too. And we're well underway with that. We announced that and won Best in Show at F3 last year for Cortex. The rollout of that has been going just spectacularly. And so we're seeing a lot of demand for that AI-enabled TMS capability where we can really, help these organizations run a better business.
Mark, can you give us an example of when Cortex has been implemented and used in sort of the best case, best outcome use case study of a really successful implementation and some examples of the success there?
Yeah, Julie, for sure. There's a few things during the last upturn or upmarket that freight saw. One of the things that we observed amongst our customers was they just got too busy to make great decisions, right? There's too much data, there's too much demand, right? Which is a totally different story than a year ago, but that's how life is in a cyclical market. So what we hear from our customers is help us make surface better decisions more quickly to us. And what that really means is those customers that can find profit points embedded in their operations, then they really benefit from the upmarket more readily, right? And so we're in that position to do that. So a couple of great examples. We want to help our customers identify and sort through the large amount of freight opportunities that are available to them out there. So we have a new tool in Cortex called Opportunity Manager, which weighs and ranks and understands exactly all of the opportunities coming into an organization and helps them surface that freight, which is best for their organization. And, there's a big distinction, right? It's really easy to do with rules and say, hey, if this, then that. But what AI really delivers to us is an ability to make decisions on changing circumstances. Where are your assets? What are the availability of your assets? What does the totality of the market look like? So we're now able to really help surface those things for customers so that they can start to make better decisions on the freight that they choose. That allows them to be more profitable. That allows them to have better asset utilization, really, and even go so far as take better care of their drivers by, kind of factoring all of that into how they select and choose which freight they're going to run.
I love that. I've been talking about that a lot at Sonar lately, that in this market, the most important thing that our customers and your customers can do is make informed, smart, tender acceptance decisions, accept freight that you can make money on or that you have assets available to pick up without leaving money on the table or without using your capacity on lower paying freight when other capacity is available. So I love hearing that, and I think it makes so much sense. And having AI be able to kind of help with that data and make those decisions on the fly also, I imagine, opens up a huge margin opportunity for brokers as trying to catch that gap, or the change in the market is really where margin is made for brokers. So that is incredibly cool. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your other products as well? I know you have a dispatch manager, you touched on load opportunity manager. I think you have a backhaul booster and some other things like that. Can you give us some examples of what those tools do and then some results some of your customers are seeing?
Yes, absolutely. We're very focused on how the dispatcher's job is going to look in 2027 and beyond, and making sure that we're delivering tools for them. We really see a paradigm shift happening across all of the operations of a trucking company, but really on the front office and dispatch and how they go and make decisions. As an example, our dispatch platform now has a feature called Dispatch Assist. What we're really doing is at the very outset, using AI tools, using the data that's, kind of historical in the environment, as well as the external data that's available to us, we're really setting up for a better plan and then execute across the fleet. So we're able to very quickly understand match freight, 2 trucks, 2 drivers, 2 lanes, so that we can surface, the most optimum routes, the most optimum way to go and deliver the freight. So we have this entire capability around dispatch assist where the system serves up a planning capability that really takes into account a ton of different ever evolving data sources. So as you start to get your best possible freight in from Opportunity Manager, now all of a sudden in the plan and optimize stage for a dispatch office, you can really drive into what is the right truck, what's the right driver, and where is it going, and I can plan all of that out ahead of time, so I get to maximize my utilization and adhere to the needs and rules that I have across my entire fleet. Our goal with this is really, like you mentioned, getting better freight, but also getting more profit. And we really see that, the carriers that are benefiting from this are seeing much better asset utilization, right? We don't want to see empty miles. We want to see better asset management. We don't want to see trucks that are down. We want to see them operating on the highway. And we want to just see better and better driver retention and satisfaction, because no one has time to go and replace drivers or have, drivers that are, unhappy with the organization. So we really think it's kind of a triad of those three things. And so our products like Dispatch Assist and Backhaul Boost really help them find the best loads and then plan and optimize the entire fleet around those loads. So it's really kind of a new paradigm and a game changer for fleets that are adopting it.
Yeah, you've made some really amazing points. You're making me wish that when I was in trucking operations, we had something like this. And you mentioned, I also think the driver retention thing is incredibly important and huge that you brought up. So in the current environment, as markets have gotten tighter, certainly retaining drivers and recruiting drivers is going to continue to be tougher and tougher. And having really good utilization, keeping them loaded and moving so they're getting paid is the best way to do that. And so I love that you touched on all of those points. But speaking of the tight market, what are you seeing as far as market conditions and what do you anticipate?
Yeah, so we do get the benefit of a broad customer base. Our customers are in a lot of different geographies, as well as a lot of different segments of the market. So I get a good broad base of it. I would say there is a level of relief, right? Certainly looking back a year ago, a lot of our customers were just in distress from the rates that they were seeing and the rising costs, right? Rates weren't great and costs were rising at that time. What I would say now is there's relief, there's cautious optimism, and there's good reason because, freight rates are going up. But at the same time, some of the benefits of it are being muted, right? Costs are also rising at just as quick a rate. There was some releases around inflation rates, pretty high inflation rates released today. And what we see in reality is between fuel, just all ancillary expenses, insurance, our customers are really feeling that pinch, that profit pinch. So, we're optimistic. These rates will continue to be strong through the rest of the year. Our customers are optimistic they will, but we're doing everything we can to help our customers run a better business so that they can really kind of hold off these rising costs, right? There's not a lot to do on that side of the equation for our customers, but we're certainly working with them to manage it as best they can.
Now, Mark, you said that the fleets that are currently in the market, the ones that will be successful and survive, are going to create new margin and not just move more freight. Now, my question for you is, what does this look like in actual practice?
Yeah. So, we think about it in those three areas, right? It's asset utilization, asset management, and driver retention and satisfaction, right? Those are three big drivers. Asset utilization, you have to keep the trucks moving, you have to keep them full, and you have to keep them billable. So the more we can do to find the right freight at the right rate and a kind of full amount of it. So that's the front haul, the back haul, making sure that we're filling in any gaps that we possibly can, right? That's hugely important, right? That you're not driving empty miles or you're minimizing the empty miles that you're driving. The second part of it is asset management, right? We want to make sure that our customers have an understanding of of predictive, of preventative maintenance, that they're ahead on their warranty maintenance. They can use our system for all of those types of things. And any machine that is down, right, in any industry, but certainly in this industry, when a machine's down, it's not generating revenue and it's not generating profit. So that asset management is extremely important. And then the third leg of the stool, just making sure that all of your systems are accurate, your data is up to date, and in fact, you're running the cleanest and most optimal business you can. Your drivers feel that, right? And they want to, that leads to their success. You pay them accurately, you pay them timely, you understand that they want to stay busy, but you also understand their work-life balance, and you're able to optimize and utilize the tools in the system to get them home when they need to get home, to make sure that their routes are planned properly, that they have the right place to stay, the right place to fuel, and all those types of things. So as long as organizations are paying attention to those three things, we think that they're having an above average chance of being in kind of the top quartile of profit makers in the industry.
Definitely. Now, Mark, this is a long-winded question for me, going a little off cuff here. I mean, like Julie's point earlier, I mean, you guys, Best in Show, fall 2025 was big for you guys, a lot of innovation. From an AI perspective, of course, with the Cortex and other technology systems. Now, my question is, your organization and the personnel specifically, the people running the show, from Danielle, Jason, everyone, how have you built such an awesome team and kept people at the center while also just having technology throughout everyday processes at BCS?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it really does come down to the people, right? They say the greatest skill of a CEO is really just hiring the right people, right? That's the trick in the whole thing. Our people have really a passion for both transportation and technology. And we've really made it a cultural element within our organization that we keep innovation at the front of everything that we do. And we make sure that our leaders understand it's okay to fail. We would rather try and fail than not try at all. The other side of it is we really try to stay connected with our community. You mentioned Jason, we spend a lot of energy on making sure the community of customers and partners is healthy and thriving, and that we're doing everything that we can to support them. And we really think there's an additional benefit outside of software, outside of technology, in just building this environment where, in fact, there can be collaboration across trucking companies, across our customers, and across our partners. So part of our thesis is get our people involved in the industry, listen to the industry and listen to the customers, and then do what we do best, which is take that technology and make that the crossroad of those things. At the end of the day, though, you have to find passionate people. And we've done a phenomenal job of putting together a team that really cares about the customer, about serving them, and then about bringing technology to them at the right time, at the right way.
It's great.
I love that. And it sounds like a team of people who actually understand what their customers need and the transportation industry, which I think domain expertise is incredibly valuable and necessary in an industry as complicated as ours. So where does AI in transportation management go from here? What's coming up for you guys?
Yeah, so we're continuing our journey. We were an early adopter, leaned in. I have a philosophy that the AI technologies, it's the next wave of technology. It can't be denied, right? We can debate how much, how far, what it will do for us. But what we know is it's central to how new technology tools are built and utilized across organizations. So we were an early adopter, starting our journey in early 2024, really leaning into the technologies and capabilities, the rollout of Cortex with some key AI capabilities built in, and we'll continue that. So like I said, we're leaned in right now to really understanding the journey of the dispatcher, the journey of the operations person in 2027 and beyond. So we'll continue to roll out new tools under our Cortex platform around that. And then we really expect that more and more of the autonomous capabilities that come from these tools, whether it be around agents or other capabilities that are kind of on the horizon for this industry, we're really building tools so that they can be deployed safely and so they can be deployed in a very trusted manner in these organizations. So you'll see a decent amount of innovation from us with regard to the actual operations of the organization, but you'll also see a decent amount of innovation from us around the trusted and secure deployment of these tools out into organizations. Both of those will become important over the next couple of years.
Innovation seems like to be just a theme that keeps coming up. Now, my question for you is actually about our breaking news with this coming out of Amazon with the LTL news. What are your thoughts, Mark? Give us a little rundown of what you're thinking about this news out of Amazon.
Yeah, and certainly that idea had been telegraphed out there to the market. So we've been thinking about it. About a third of our customers do some manner of LTL. Some of it is small, some of it is opportunistic, some of it is larger, right, where that's their primary business. There is no doubt at all that Amazon is a disruptor in every single thing that they do. So we're going to have to see how some of that plays out with regard to how it impacts the other players and other carriers that are out there. But one of the things that Amazon does for any part of the industry, whether it was AWS, whether it was their retail business, any of those things, it really drove the rest of the industry to raise their performance and really dig deeper into, kind of how to use technology to run a better business. One of the things they're good at, one of the things I've heard for years about Amazon is they always had a philosophy that said, hey, if I'm going to do something repetitively, if I'm going to do it today and tomorrow and the next day, automate it. That was their kind of their catchphrase and their go-to. And that's a wonderful thing for all of our customers to think about, right? You don't know when the good times are going to end, so that the more that you can possibly do to make sure that more and more of your operations are automated and that you really understand operationally you're running the best business you can, that puts you in the best position to compete, should that be necessary, the best position to partner with Amazon, should that be necessary, but at the very least, they will raise the bar in the industry so that shippers are now looking at all of our collective customers with a little bit more critical eye to how they automate, how they bring data forward, how they utilize all of these tools. So I think net, it's definitely, certainly going to shake some things up, but it should be really a call to action for the rest of the industry that, there's no resting on our heels. We have to be able to match them one for one in their capabilities. And I think here's the good news. 10 years ago, these technologies were not available. They weren't accessible to the small and mid-sized transportation company. Today, they are. So accessibility of technology is at a whole new level. If Amazon can do it, you can do it too. So it's no longer just the world of the big guys.
I love it. If Amazon can do it, you can do it too. Again, Mark Hill, CEO of PCS Software. Mark, thank you for such an awesome conversation. Truly excited to see you in September in Dallas. And yes, thank you so much just for being here, and show some love to the team from me and the rest of us here at FreightWaves.
I definitely will. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And it's a great first opening segment here on FreightWaves today. We're going to have a lot on the way. Of course, we're going to have a sonar update. We're going to have a couple more interviews as well. So we're just getting started. Stick around, only here on FreightWaves today.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me, and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
All right, welcome back. That was a great interview. And from here, we are going to get Craig's take a little bit on the Amazon LTL announcement and a little bit of news.
Hey, from Houston, Texas. I am connecting through the airport to a flight that's going to take me to Aspen, Colorado. I'll be back in the studio on Friday, just as a one-day thing. When we look at the freight market, tender rejections continue to hover well above 17%. That's incredibly tight. We heard yesterday from RXO that the Roadcheck week was the third fastest increase in spot rates in their entire history and their data, which tells you how robust it is. Spot rates are, if you look at the 7-day average, about 373. Again, it's a very tight market. There's no sign that it's loosening or will loosen. This is obviously June is the busiest month of the year, so you can expect the conditions will continue to stay pretty robust. One of the more interesting news stories today is that Amazon is rolling out its point-to-point LTL service. It's an expansion of Amazon's efforts in their transportation to really own their own transportation network and frankly, to compete with the other transportation providers. They've been in the parcel business for some time. They've had other types of truckload offerings. The Freight.Amazon have been out there for some time. They rolled out supply chain services just this past year. And now what we're looking at is this expansion in the LTL business, the point-to-point LTL business. Now, this is a little different than what they've done in the past. They've had inbound LTL services they've offered to their customers. This is actually expanding really to point-to-point LTL, which means it effectively is competing against Old Dominion, FedEx Freight, XPO, et cetera. And that's probably where we'll see the impact. I think this will actually be a net positive for tightening capacity conditions. It means that some of the drivers that would be out in the market, some of the OTR drivers, are going to be pulled into Amazon's network. LTL, again, is a fixed network. But one of the, I think, features of Amazon's network is it relies upon independent contractors versus the traditional LTL guys that operate with employee drivers. That's a different model, and therefore, what will likely happen is they'll be pulling those drivers out of OTR and drivers that would be owner operators in the OTR market will be pulled out. So I think that will actually take some capacity out of the market. We could see an additional just tightness. Does it add capacity to LTL? Yeah, perhaps, and it will potentially take some freight away from some of the other LTL providers. But LTL is coming back. We talked about the fact that the LTL providers are raising rates. It's probably one of the reasons and a catalyst for Amazon to roll this out now is that they feel that the market is sufficient healthy enough to do that. But it's also a sign that they build out the maturity of their network and not enabling them to actually go out and offer the service. But I do think it does mean tighter freight capacity because there'd just be less available over the road capacity out in the market. And it probably means that this product will end up putting some pressure on the other LTL providers. But remember, LTL providers are typically employee drivers, long tenured drivers. So I think it has more impact to the capacity in the OTR segment. Maybe it opens up capacity in LTL from the fact that just less volumes going over their networks. But again, I think it's more of an interesting development if you're in LTL versus truckload. and a sign of the times.
All right, that was fascinating, Malcolm. I love thinking about how we'll continue to monitor and see if it does create capacity for the LTL market and if it takes drivers from OTR and what happens with driver availability. But with that, we are going to have a quick break, hear from one of our sponsors, and be back with Jim Mullen, the president of TCA. It's National Safety Month, which makes this a great time to ask how your fleet can prevent more accidents. Samsara AI detects risks in real time, giving teams more visibility into what's happening on the road and more context to coach drivers before risky moments become incidents. Fleets using Samsara Complete AI Safety Solution have reduced crash rates by nearly 75%. See the data behind the results in the Samsara Safety Report at samsara.com/freightwaves.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara Driving Coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The map is changing. As global uncertainties rise, the future of the supply chain is moving closer to home. Welcome to the new coast-to-coast North American network. Driven by massive reshoring trends and next-gen industrial innovation, optimized by AI workflows that build unshakable operational resilience, and locked down by proactive security against evolving freight fraud. Are you ready to navigate the shift? Join the industry's top minds to build the future. The FreightWaves Domestic Supply Chain Summit, streaming live June 17th. Register for free at live.freightwaves.com.
The federal agency responsible for commercial truck safety has just given over 1,100 employees overseeing nearly 8 million regulated entities. And the Truckload Carriers Association says that the math is putting lives at risk. This week, they released a white paper calling on Congress to fix it. Jim Mullen is the TCA president, a former FMCSA acting administrator, as well as a former executive vice president and general counsel at Werner Enterprises. Jim, welcome to FreightWaves Today.
Malcolm, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thanks for being
here. We just wrapped up our TCA Safety and Security Conference here in Oklahoma City. So I'm in a hotel room here in Oklahoma City.
Oh, out in OKC, not seeing the Thunder in the finals, but that's okay.
Yeah, a lot of sore feelings in these parts right now, I guess. Yeah.
I love it.
So Jim, tell us a little bit about the white paper you guys just released. I spent a bit of time looking at it this morning. Didn't get through the whole 29 pages. So can you give us a little bit of a recap?
Yeah. So it is fairly voluminous, and that was intentional because we wanted to make sure that we were very thorough in our message. But the main purpose behind it is the agency has just shy of 1,200 employees, and that's one employee for about every 7,200 regulated motor carriers, and they do not have sufficient resources to do their job. And as we've seen the last several years, because of the other factors with the fraud and the non-domiciled and those other issues, the lack of resources and ability to enforce the regulations, and then you have this broker liability kind of, we all know that is now set, that brokers have liability when motor carriers have accidents if they don't do their proper vetting. So there's a lot of reasons why the time is ripe to get this done. And obviously with the surface reauthorization, the highway bill, and the appropriation process being in season right now, we thought the timing was good to come forward with this. But let me be clear, though, this is not a FMCSA, you're not doing your job properly. This is not a poke in the eye for them. This is, they're doing as best as they can with the resources they have. They just need more resources. It's up to Congress to provide them that.
How do you think it got this bad, where the amount of carriers and information that needs to be monitored is so staggering compared to the available staffing?
Yeah, so the FMCSA, well, it used to be part of federal highways until the year 2000. And in 2000, they separated motor carriers into the FMCSA, but they really have been staffing it and resourcing it, funding it, basically as if we're still operating in the year 2000. Sure, there's inflationary increases, and every once in a while they'll get a little plus up on the reauthorization, but it's been pretty stagnant for the last 26 years. And we all know that our issues now are substantially more robust than they were 26 years ago. And then the problem becomes, once people figure out how to exploit the regulations and the lack of enforcement, then it just grows. It's like a snowball effect. So as folks started to game the system and made money gaming the system, more people started gaming the system. And now we're in a spot where, it's caused, a rate trough. It's caused unsafe behaviors on the roadway. And I'll say kudos to the administration and administrative bars. I mean, they obviously mean business. They are going to continue to heighten enforcement.
Oh.
I believe we still have Jim. Jim, can you hear us okay?
Sorry. I can hear you, yes.
Perfect,
Yep,
perfect. We can hear you as well.
Okay, sorry.
Hey, hotel internet is tough.
It's all good. We're going to get some of that Gig City Chattanooga Wi-Fi to you in OKC. I want to ask and build on this point and really put it into perspective for our listeners, because large truck crashes killed approximately 6,000 people and injured 160,000 in 2022. With that, how much of this is directly tied to the oversight gap?
I would say a fair amount of it. Historically, I've been hovering around 5,000. I hate to use the word hovering, we're talking about lives, but just the data suggests that it was around 5,000 for years. Then you saw a spike. And by the way, we used that year, 2022, because that's the last year of finalized data. The unofficial data shows improvement, so it is coming down. That's the good news. But it absolutely has a correlation between lack of enforcement and unsafe behaviors on the road. And then when you started bringing in these foreign actors, I'll say this, they are very talented, right? They are good, bad actors. They've verticalized their business. So they have the schools, they have the ELDs. We all seen how they change ELDs roadside during an inspection, and then bringing in the foreign drivers. So all of that system really was kind of like the perfect storm for where we ended up. And again, we're seeing some improvement in those fatalities and accidents. And we obviously believe that if you continue to increase those resources and increase that enforcement of the regulations that are already on the books, you'll continue to see a decrease in the fatalities and serious accidents.
That makes a lot of sense.
Can you, going back to the white paper, can you walk us through the asks of Congress a bit more? I know there was some staffing asks, some funding, some modernization of some technology. Can you go through those asks for us again?
Yep. So I would say kind of at the basic level, as you probably know, you pay your $300, you get your DOT, you get your MC authority, and you can operate, you can haul freight. There is a regulation that requires a new entrant safety audit within 12 months, which the states actually, like 95, 98% of those entry audits are done at the state level with state partners versus federal investigators. But so that's problem one is there's zero vetting process before you actually get your operation authority and you start hauling freight. We think that's backwards. We think that there should be a robust vetting process before you get the authority and ability to start hauling freight. So if you get that done, that's tied to your safety fitness determination. You're probably aware that it's like 93, 94% of all motor carriers, they don't have a rating. They're unrated. And you have satisfactory, you have conditional, and then of course you have those that are unsatisfactory. And it's really hard. There's obviously a great desire in our industry for FMCSA to give a rating that means something. And when I was there was a discussion. Once you get your authority, should you be labeled satisfactory? And then it's yours to lose, which makes some sense, except for you're giving somebody satisfactory because they paid $300. And that doesn't make any sense. So if you have a robust vetting system before you're able and allowed to operate on the roads and haul freight, then you have a basis for a satisfactory rating. And then you can have a meaningful safety fitness determination. So step one is have a robust vetting system up front. And you can do a fee. So we should, and we're proposing in this paper to have an increased fee, which will help fund some of the additional personnel. So that's kind of step one. And then step two, the data that the FMCSA has, it's in separate systems, doesn't talk to each other. And as you know, they're trying to modernize that system through this MODIS program, but they need to spend money and get the right folks working on those systems so they all talk to each other. And then if you accomplish that, then you're going to have a better real-time ability to determine who your high-risk motor carriers are, because now they're relying on CSA data predominantly, and we all know that there are some flaws in that data. And so if you have the systems that can allow these investigators to pull that data, and by the way, they should use AI to do that as well. You can pull that data from the system and you can prioritize who is truly today a high-risk carrier, not who was a high-risk carrier 30 days ago, 60 days ago, 90 days ago. You can do it on the fly. So those really are two of the most important aspects of this thought paper. There are several more, but up front, it's the ability to make sure that folks that are operating authority, it's more than just $300 in the truck.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of work to be done, and it should start with a more robust vetting system. So you brought it up. What is your take on the new MODIS registration system and its rollout and some of the issues that have certainly been discussed?
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. I guess it's the first word that comes to my mind is because it's necessary. It's had to be done for a while, and like a lot of things IT related, the longer you put it off, the more problematic it becomes. And I think that's true with this. And they use outside resources. I mean, there's nobody in the FMCSA that's writing code, by the way. So that they use outside vendors for all of this stuff. I think probably they got a little ahead of themselves on rolling it out. I'm not sure they had worked out all the kinks yet. Well, apparently they didn't. And I do know for a fact that, unfortunately, during the rollout, some of these other legacy systems that are not yet part of the consolidation, they had issues at the same time. So not only do you have the transition problems, you had some of the legacy problems, and it was again another perfect storm. But we at the TCA, we're kind of preaching patience because this is good for the industry. It's unfortunate that they're having the problems. I did talk to the administrator on it was Monday or Tuesday. They were in the office all over the weekend and trying to get this stuff fixed. And it's causing them a lot of angst. I mean, they realize what pain this is causing. I've talked to some carriers that through no fault of their own, their authority, was taken away and now they can't get it back and they can't haul freight. So it's a problem and it's unfortunate. But we're just be patient, because in the long run, this is going to be better for our industry.
Yeah, I agree with all of those sentiments. So we talked a little bit about better vetting and the CDL process as well, but I read that you're also calling for better crash causation data. Can you speak a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah. Well, first off, we haven't had the agency hasn't done a meaningful study on crash causation. So I came from the industry and ran a safety department of about 10,000 drivers, right? And we knew exactly what was causing accidents. But when I went to FMCSA, they don't have that information. They don't know what's going on. Well, I should say they don't know what's going on the road, but they don't have the same data that the motor carriers have. And they can't just ask for that. There's rules against that sort of thing. But they do need to have a very serious crash causation study done so they know where to apply the medicine. But when I was there, I think they were talking about $30 million for a crash causation study, which I thought, well, that's what my next gig is going to be. I'm going to go into crash causation. They need to do better because the investigators, sometimes, you get overwhelmed with what's out there, and some of it's meaningful and some of it's not on the data. And crash causation study will be very helpful for that. A couple other items that are in that position paper we haven't talked about yet is, the self-certification of the ELDs, the schools. That needs to be changed, and the Administrator of ours has said they're going to change that, and I expect some rulemaking to come out on that. Just a little bit of background on that, because I was there, the ELD requirement was already done. It hadn't been implemented yet, but the rule itself had already been finalized. And the reason why they went to self-certifications, they kind of borrowed from NHTSA's self-certification for OEMs on trucks, car vehicles, and I think they thought that you would have the same diligent actors in this industry that you have, in the OEM and the manufacturer's industry. And obviously it hasn't turned out that way. So in hindsight, it sure seems like that was a really boneheaded move, and maybe it was, but that's why they did what they did. So I know the administration is looking to change that. Obviously in the schools, we've seen that they shut down like 4,500 schools already. That don't have proper compliance. So those things are really important too. So not only the vetting of the motor carriers before they get authority, but obviously make sure that you have properly and well-trained drivers out there on the roadway. And lastly, the oversight of the states and the granting of their CDLs, the credentialing, that needs to have greater oversight, and our paper calls for greater oversight at the federal level, not to take over the credentialing, the CDL process, but just greater oversight, because they give away about $550 million to the states, and part of that money is to go towards the CDL credentialing, and they need to have more oversight of all that money that goes out the door.
So I think we could all agree that all of these measures are absolutely necessary to create a more safe roads and from a national security and safety 100%. Standpoint, but it will increase the barriers of entry for new drivers, new trucking companies. So I got to ask what you are thinking on the market as we've continued to see capacity tighten based on really lack of supply more than increased demand. That's catching up now too. But what's your take on the market?
Yeah, so I think we've seen. It seems like, and what the folks that they listen to, it's a capacity issue, not a supply issue. That the freight volumes themselves, right? So just heard Craig talking about it. If this comes to fruition, that will definitely, I think, will reduce capacity even further from today's levels, and I think it'll eventually, as we know, will have to be replaced, but it'll be replaced with safer, more compliant motor carrier. So we just finished up our safety and security. So I'm here in Oklahoma City talking to a lot of our members, and things are looking better, right? It's been a horrible 3+ years, but there are glimmers of hope, if not actual real hope and improvement. So, but again, this process itself is not intended to necessarily affect capacity, other than get the bad capacity out of the marketplace and prevent bad capacity from entering the marketplace. So that's really why we're doing this. This is not a market play. This is entirely a safety play.
Now, Jim, I want to ask if our viewers and listeners could take away one thing from today's conversation that you really want to stress for not only where we're at, but where we're going, what would that one thing be?
that the agency that's responsible for keeping our roads safe needs our help. It needs more support. And I'm working, this is a TCA, we authored this, we put it out, but I'm working with all the other associations that are stakeholders and have already gotten strong support. And so this needs to be an industry-wide effort to convince Congress to right-size the budget for FMCSA. And to your point, to save lives and to bring down the number of people getting hurt on our roadways.
So what do you think is a realistic path then for getting Congress to get this done, and what do you think is a realistic time frame?
Yeah, so I've been on the job here at TCA for 2 months, and this is something I have been thinking of, and actually had conversations with the administration on this. I wish we had started this before the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee marked up their reauthorization, because this is a part of that. Of course, the appropriators are important as well. So, but again, it's going to be some time before they pass that, if they pass the reauthorization this year. So we have time. And what's the realistic possibility? I think high. Obviously, there's the funding mechanism is important, but through the registration fees and some other fees that are baked into this, you can fund it. And as you may know, our industry and our association, we've been asking for increased fuel tax to help pay for the Highway Trust Fund to begin with. So we got another solution for how to fix the Highway Trust Fund. But this one's more urgent, and the timing is right for the fact they're working on reauthorization. So I've spoken to a lot of state executives. They are supportive. I've talked to the other DC associations. They're supportive. I've received texts and emails from a lot of people just in the last 24 hours since we released the white paper. So I do believe this is going to be an industry-wide effort. Nobody wants to go back to where we were the last 3 years. And this is one way to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So for those of us involved in the industry and for our viewers, what is the best way that we can show our support? Yeah, so give me a bit of time. So we just came out, and I'm hopefully within the next 2 weeks, I'll have kind of the whole coalition, so to speak. We're going to professionally print them up, and we're going to hit Capitol Hill with it. So eventually, the easiest and best way is to reach out to your members of Congress. Reach out to your senators and tell them that we want safer roadways. And the way to do that is to increase the funding and oversight over the FMCSA. So let me get back to you within 2 weeks, hopefully, and Julie, and tell you, hey, we're ready to roll. Good. Yeah, we'll look forward to that. We will be on the lookout for that communication and ensure that we help get that out and encourage those who are supportive of this and want to take part in this effort towards more safe roadways, have the opportunity to do so. Jim, thank you so much for being on today and for talking through this issue. We really appreciate it. It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks, Jim.
I think this is such an interesting topic, and it plays in, honestly, hand in hand, I think, with fraud as well. And all of these, a much more robust vetting system, I think, is going to have a huge impact there if we can get to that point as well.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, we could have gone down the whole entire rabbit hole about this and just how it's going to predicate throughout the industry. And this is, definitely something to keep an eye out on as we continue to monitor it. So.
All right. Well, with that, we are going to take a quick break before we get into the back half of our show.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
What's the masterclass all about? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a driver, you're an owner-operator, you're a fleet owner, whether you're in compliance services, dispatcher, no matter what it is, masterclass is for you. Every 2 weeks, you're going to sit down with me, and we're going to go over certain business topics that are related specifically to your small trucking company operations. We're going to help you with everything from compliance to how to negotiate better on the spot board, how to find direct freight, and everything in between. This is the reason why you don't want to miss out on masterclass. It's about an hour to an hour and a half, and then on top of that, you'll have the library to you so that way you can always research and reflect back onto it. Don't miss out this opportunity. This is built specifically for you. I'm excited, and I hope to see you in class.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse. What if your visibility didn't just tell you where a truck was, but exactly where it needed to be 48 hours from now? Think of a logistics network that corrects its own mistakes before they cost you a single dime. What if your supply chain could think for itself? Imagine AI agents negotiating rates in milliseconds, predictive models that solve labor shortages before they even happen. This isn't science fiction, it's the agenda. On July 15th at the historic Old Post Office in Chicago, FreightWaves presents the Supply Chain AI Symposium. We are defining in real time how AI is embedded into every mile, every warehouse, and every handshake. Because in 2026, the future isn't just coming, it's already negotiating. The FreightWaves Supply Chain AI Symposium. Secure your spot now.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to FreightWaves Today. Of course, I am Malcolm Harris, joined by Julie Vandekamp. It has been quite the first hour of FreightWaves Today.
Yeah, it really has been great. I was thinking about a few years ago, I made a career change and I came to Sonar after being in operations and pricing and working at an asset-based carrier. And one of the things that I was most excited about is being able to still be involved in this industry, but from a broader angle, not just one organization. And so talking about topics like that, about the safety of our roadway, what we can do to support actually changing the processes that allow for vetting of new carriers and driver safety and fitness and all of those sorts of things just makes me happy.
No, it makes me happy too. I think being able to tell stories is something cool. And really, to your point, just having that angle of, all right, like I was in this and now I get to look at it from a broader lens. I was in the brokerage space for quite some time. And now we get to step out of it and look at it at a broader lens, even with what we're about to discuss, which is the perfect tee up, because the Supreme Court's ruling, again, in the Montgomery versus Carib Transport, has changed the liability landscape for freight brokerage forever. And the industry is still figuring out what it means. Andy Engardio is the Managing Director of Transportation at Gallagher. And with that, Andy, welcome to FreightWaves Today.
We don't have Andy.
Oh, we lost Andy, so give us a minute to figure out those technical difficulties. And in the meantime, we wanted to give a little love to Malcolm and What the Truck, and we have a little clip to play there that we can chat about.
All right, let's do it.
They stole my damn Martin, right? You got a personal story too, right? I mean, your family business was impacted by theft. Can you tell us that story, how that happened?
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even just one story, it's a rampant issue. So, my family, we're in the tire business. We're a tire wholesaler. And I know I talked to a lot of people, a lot of my customers that previously moved to tire freight. They'll all tell you it's one of the most stolen commodities out there because any container of tires, give or take, is about 40,000. Any tire shop on the street will give you, 25 grand for a container of tires. And so it's one of the easiest commodities to go ahead and steal. And because of how kind of commoditized the industry is, people don't invest as much in technology to go ahead and prevent it. And so around the time I was actually graduating last year, we actually had a really big theft happen to us where we lost many loads. And the issue for the shippers in this case is when we work with brokers, brokers come to us and, from our perspective, this broker was very tech forward, they had a lot of tools, et cetera. But when I got tasked to actually work with the police on the investigation as to what went wrong, I realized just how manual some of these compliance checks were to begin with. And that was sort of inspired us to go ahead and create this company and start focusing on this problem in particular. But I mean, in the tire business, every operator I know in the tire business has had loads stolen.
It really lit off some alarms in my head. As you said, any tire shop out there will give you 25 grand for a 40-foot load of, for a load, or 53-foot load. That implies that legitimate businesses will look the other way and just buy a bunch of tires off somebody on the street. And that exponentially increases the issue, right?
I mean, you'd be surprised how sophisticated some of the buyers for stolen cargo can be, though. We work with a certain shipper who actually got reached out to by the government, and they were told that foreign countries were essentially trying to steal their products for re-export to them, right?
Sure.
And there's certain goods, like obviously we have a customer that ships GPUs that strongly believes that whenever a load gets stolen or is attempted to be stolen, it's meant for re-export to countries where it's difficult to buy such technology. In pharmaceuticals, the theft is much less in terms of number of incidents because the pool of buyers is also going to be less, right? Like you can't find a quick buyer for a pallet of like GLP-1s, right? The same way that you can just, sling a container of tires to someone else. And so I think that's the other thing people need to think about is in terms of what they're moving, the demand for possibly stolen goods is what also determines the likelihood of theft to happen in the first place.
That was Akil Naeem with the E3 Group out of California. It was a great interview with Akil.
Yeah, so here's what I thought was fascinating.
Talk to me.
Certainly the fraud landscape is changing as thieves and bad actors have gotten more sophisticated, and it's become something that we all talk about constantly now. Earlier in my career, we used to, really be concerned and worry about high-value product, high-value loads and the security around those, but never thought about a $30,000 to $50,000 load of tires being a theft risk. So it's really interesting to think about the theft risk being around things that are easily moved. The thieves can move them quickly and easily and resell them versus things that are really high value.
No, absolutely. And then another component of that is like the third party being able to not necessarily know that these are stolen commodities because it looks valid. So it's like if you're not necessarily like a Goodyear, but maybe a tier B or tier C type of provider, I mean, you're trying to get the best deal because who's not, right? So being able to see something and not knowing it's stolen it's really, really interesting. And Akil did a great job breaking that down on the show yesterday.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that process, but you think there would be like a chain of custody.
Yeah. Paper trail of some sort.
So you would know that they were stolen or like some sort of verification or validation that they were, it's an interesting topic to think more about.
It is, and it's something that we're going to continue to talk about. Of course, we're just coming off the heels of Cleveland, Ohio with the Freight Fraud Symposium. We have, of course, our event, the Symposium for AI in July happening in Chicago. And then we can't forget about F3. I mean, that is going to be a topic of conversation. F3 is going to be insane this year.
It literally came up in my sonar job about how quickly that is just going to, it's only June, but once the summer comes, it gets here very quickly. So yeah, excited for that coming up in October as well.
That's fantastic. I think we do have him now officially. Andy Engardio, again, is the Managing Director of Transportation at Gallagher. Andy, welcome officially to FreightWaves Today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Well, Andy, I want to kick this thing off because this decision has been the talk and conversation amongst so many of us, whether you are in the shipper side of the house, whether you are in the carrier side of the house, or whether you are in the broker side of the house. So we have our three pillars, I'd like to say. Break it down from each standpoint. What does this look like specifically when you're taking, again, the shipper versus broker versus carrier? What does that look like for our listeners?
That's a great way to look at it. So at the baseline, a freight broker's job is to help arrange loads between the shippers and connect them with the motor carriers willing to pick up those loads and transport them between 2 points safely and on time. And so the biggest point of this Supreme Court decision has been the definition of safely.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Now, Julie, did you?
So I guess I'm wondering, how important is documentation going to be as part of this, right? So we're talking about safely. What does that actually mean? What is the definition of that? What documentation is needed to show that you've done due diligence?
So if we look at kind of the safely idea, there are some brokers that felt for a long time safely just meant making sure the cargo got to its final destination in one piece, and making sure that they didn't have any damaged loads and that everything was accepted by the receiver. So the next stage of the question has been, where is the liability on the broker for finding quality motor carriers to transport those loads? And the Supreme Court decision ultimately showed that brokers can be held liable for negligent hiring in the states. So when it comes to kind of the documentation side of it, it's new for the grand conversation, but the brokers that have been in the space long enough and have contingent auto, contingent cargo broker coverages, the insurance companies for a long time have held them to this vetting standard that has not been openly talked about in the industry.
So speaking of insurance, are underwriters already tightening their standards and changing that vetting process and also that level of requirement?
Again, most of the insurance companies already servicing freight brokers have had vetting protocols in place. That includes when you're going up for the renewal of your insurance or trying to get insurance for the first time. They ask questions like, send us a copy of your broker carrier agreement so that they can look through it to see where the liability stands. And they ask questions like, what do you, when you're vetting your motor carriers to pick up a load, do you have to have certain standards? Are the insurance with A plus, A minus, or better rated carrier? What kind of exclusions are built into the coverage forms? So that way they can have more protection for the insurance. The underwriters right now are really taking a step back, looking at their current vetting requirements for their insurance coverages. And nobody's making any knee-jerk reactions at this point. They're waiting to see how case law kind of develops. It's so new.
It is definitely new, and I'm happy you mentioned that. I want to talk about two ends of the spectrum, because I want to talk about, let's say, the top 100, right? The big dogs of brokerage versus the mid to lower tier. Is the conversation still the same surrounding this topic when it comes to this ruling, or are we handling it a bit differently simply for the fact that, all right, hey, we're bigger, we'll be fine, versus, hey, like, we need to think about, some different things here and have different conversations? How does that look to you, Andy?
I think the beauty of this situation is either small brokers, medium brokers, or the large 100 that you mentioned, they're all being held to the same question and the same standard. It's about providing safe passage for the vehicles and being responsible for what goes over the road under your booking. So everyone is facing the same requirements. So the question really is, what do you have as a vetting process, if you have one at all? And if you don't, what are you doing to develop those protocols, to develop that vetting process? And are you willing to stand by the decisions that you make? And so even on smaller freight brokers that are just getting started or been around for a while, but maybe haven't been as in the weeds with selecting of carriers, everyone is making those conversations. But for the larger carriers, for the medium carriers, freight brokers that have been paying attention, this ruling has not caught anybody off guard. It just kind of said, like, all right, let's reevaluate what we have on paper, what we stand for, and what we stand by.
No, absolutely. And brokerage has been a lot about, when it comes to, obviously, hey, we got to make money. This is a business profitability. But I do want to talk about the enhancement when it comes to these different models that we see in this space, because yes, I mean, there's a carrier-facing side, a customer-facing side. There's, a cradle model. But, with this new ruling that has just happened, it's put a dent in a lot of different things. And I'm sure, again, conversations are being had. Does there need to be an additional component, maybe perhaps more verification or more resources that come to the back of the house to support the efforts for business development for different brokerages around the country?
That's a great question. And we're so early in this decision that we're going to see what develops. Are shippers going to take more of a role in the vetting protocol? Are they going to have higher standards than a broker might already develop on their own, or an insurance carrier and a risk management program might require? So the question of who's going to make the first step of vetting and what level they're going to make the requirements is still going to be kind of ever evolving for the next few months to few years.
Julie, I agree. I mean, somebody's got to blink first, right?
Yeah, and I guess when I wonder about the vetting, I also wonder about then compliance to that vetting when it comes to brokerage. So you can have all of the right documentation, and you can have a compliance department that tells you like, here's a flag on this carrier. And when the floor broker overrides that and loads that carrier anyway, I feel like that is when people are really going to get into trouble, because that flag was raised and that decision was made anyway, if there is then an incident. So I think it'll be interesting to also. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's a great point, that you can have a wonderful vetting process. You could have the most defensible vetting process in the world, but if you can override it and you can move on and not accept it, or somebody at a desk underwriting level could say, no, we're going to place this load with this carrier anyway because they happen to be in the area, that's going to be a big problem for freight brokers in the future. So when you develop something in writing, stand by it.
When you develop something in writing, stand by it.
Yeah, I wonder if even incentive plans for brokers are going to have to change, where they're not just based on like margin or service, but also compliance with choosing carriers that have gone through the vetting process and are like it. There's going to have to be some sort of element for those floor brokers.
Absolutely. There's going to have to be.
Incent them to follow what you've just suggested, the process that is in writing, not deviate from it, even if it means paying more.
That's a great question and segue to my next question, because let's go to my world in terms of recruiting for a second when it comes to brokerages.
Yeah.
You know, you are bringing in people that are 18 to 22 years old. For the majority of these big brokerages, you know, they're very eager to obviously make money, to make commissions, and to, you know, do what they were brought in to do. But then also, how do you slow the game down for them to understand, hey, like, this is a serious thing. Carrier vetting is serious to the point of, hey, you're not going to be here at this organization because of how serious this is. I mean, is that a training aspect? I mean, how do you double down on that and something that hasn't necessarily been something that's been at the forefront all this time?
Definitely should be built into the training for these young kids coming right out of college, first job in a lot of cases. I started in Chicago, and a couple of my friends worked in freight brokerages right away, and they learned a lot on the job. What we're also seeing there is the larger freight brokers that are focused on recruitment, that are focused on bringing in the next generation of brokers. They are setting up training, not just for how to get on the phone, how to arrange freight, how to make a relationship with a motor carrier or a shipper. But a piece of that also has to come back to risk assessment, understanding what the insurance coverages are in place and how that risk is managed. Who's taking the responsibility in every scenario? What is really kind of go back to basics? What is auto liability? What is cargo liability? What is covered? What is not covered? And the best freight brokers are putting that into a portion of their training. And at Gallagher, we've helped a lot of our freight broker clients develop that, I guess, class within their trainings program.
I think it's going to require a real cultural shift in some brokerage operations, certainly. So to really boil this down, we've talked about a lot of things. Can we summarize what a defensible carrier vetting process looks like now versus what it may have looked like before the ruling? And then I'm going to ask you at the end, too, for one key takeaway for some brokers who are going through this process and trying to improve.
No problem. And I think the hard part is it's so early, we're not going to be able to tell what a perfect defensible program is for vetting. They're going to have to review what comes out of case law and what the courts ultimately decide. The most important aspect is, do you have a process that you can stand behind throughout the course of your career? Are you setting standards? Are you working with an internal vetting program that does not show you carriers with elevated alerts or that have maybe had issues in the past? Are you just taking them out of your program completely? Are you allowing them to stay, but when they clean up, are they able to move forward? The biggest piece that we're kind of seeing is recommending, when you have your vetting process, as you make changes, make sure to document when those changes took place and keep the old versions, because you could have a claim that comes up a few years later and your vetting process might have changed, but you're still going to want to know what was the vetting process in place 2 years ago. That way you'll have a way to look back and say, okay, at the time, did the motor carrier we arranged freight with meet the requirements we had on file? And have we evolved since then? And if so, why?
That's really good advice.
Absolutely.
All right, so one additional just key takeaway for a broker who is looking at how to wrap their arms around this, figure out what they need to do right now. So document your vetting process, document how that changes over time. Anything else?
I would say get with your leadership team and your risk advising committee to make sure that everyone's on the same page of what is your vetting process in place today and how do you think it needs to evolve in the coming months, to making sure you have a scheduled plan for what are we going to do as this develops. So paying attention to what else is going to be announced. You're right, this has been everywhere. We're going to have to see how all the cards settle, but understanding what programs you have now, what can you go out and get? What software is available to help you with this vetting protocol? And making sure you reach out to your risk team, your insurance providers, to find out what offerings they have, because they're doing the exact same thing you are and trying to figure out what the next stage of the freight brokerage world will look like.
Really good advice. Thank you so much for being here, Andy, and I'm sure we will talk to you again in the future.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Andy.
So really good information. I will tell you that never have I had any desire to be part of like a carrier compliance team within a brokerage.
No way.
I would hate it even more right now, but in some ways you would love it too, because your job just got so much more important.
You know, they are now the most beloved, I'd say, in the office from their C-suite. I think that before it used to be, oh, let's go to compliance. And now it's like, you need to go to compliance. You know, people aren't joking about this. And I think it's the worst is yet to come, meaning like we're going to see a lot of this continuation of, all right, liability. All right, let's make sure written documentation. You heard the man, write it down, write it down, write it down. So we'll continue to see how this unfolds over time.
All right, so after this, we are going to hear from our sponsor, RXO, and then we're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with Mike Baudendistel to talk on our segment On the Rails about all things happening with intermodal.
Race car drivers like NASCAR champion Jesse Love are a lot like commercial drivers, pros. But even the best in the world still watch the tape to see what they missed and get better next time. So we created the Samsara driving coach.
Great race, Jesse, but you were following too closely and you were speeding.
Okay, you got me on that one.
Samsara uses insights from millions of professional drivers to coach drivers in real time.
Because even champions need a coach.
Give me the keys.
The map is changing. As global uncertainties rise, the future of the supply chain is moving closer to home. Welcome to the new Coast to Coast North American network, driven by massive reshoring trends and next-gen industrial innovation, optimized by AI workflows that build unshakable operational resilience, and locked down by proactive security against evolving freight fraud. Are you ready to navigate the shift? Join the industry's top minds to build the future. The FreightWaves Domestic Supply Chain Summit, streaming live June 17th. Register for free at live.freightwaves.com.
All right, we're going to hear a quick word from our sponsor, RXO, and then we'll get right to it with Mike. Getting reliable capacity can be complicated. Let RXO make it simple. As the third largest provider of brokered transportation in North America, RXO has the scale, resources, and expertise to help you tackle any shipping challenge. From last-minute spot load to a managed transportation solution, from LTL to intermodal, from trained logistics experts to AI-powered freight automations, RXO has you covered, from the first mile to the last mile. Start shipping on easy mode with RXO and get smart solutions to move your freight. Learn more at rxo.com/capacity.
Welcome back to FreightWaves Today. The Association of American Railroads is out with a fresh weekly rail traffic number update this morning, and we've got the right guy to break it down for us. Mike Baudendistel is the head of intermodal solutions at FreightWaves Sonar, and he is here with us. Mike, welcome back to FreightWaves Today.
Hi, good to see you guys.
Good to see you as well.
Thanks for being on, Mike. So whenever I have any questions about intermodal, what's happening with intermodal data, if I don't understand something international or what's coming in like ocean and air, and I'm looking at it is always Mike that I call. He is incredibly smart. He has an incredible mind for understanding how these things impact financial markets and taking it beyond just like the sonar data when it comes to like true transportation. So thrilled to get to talk to you a little bit more today, Mike, and thanks for doing this.
Fantastic.
Tell us about the AAR weekly rail traffic numbers. What are you seeing? What's happening with volumes?
Sure. So this comes out every Wednesday morning, first thing in the morning. This comes out for the previous week. So this data, if we can get up on the screen, is for the week ending June 6th. And what it shows is, for the most part, rail traffic has really been strong. And it's really been across sectors. So overall, the rail carloads last week up 1%. But really, the way that the railroads look at it internally is they look at it for the past 4 weeks, and then they look at those past 4 weeks year over year and do that comparison, because 1 week doesn't always make a trend. It can cause noise if there's for timing of holidays and things. And so when you look at it that way, the rail carload traffic up 2.5% year over year, and then the rail intermodal traffic up 8% year over year. And so first, I'll start with that rail carload piece, up 2.5% year over year. When rail carloads are growing, it's almost always a sign that the industrial economy is growing. Now, there are some sectors in there that are not terribly related, like agriculture, products. You're really doing tremendously well. A bunch of reasons for that. That's been up about 12% year over year this past 4 weeks. And that's offsetting a lot of the weakness, maybe more than offsetting the weakness in coal. It's down about 5% year over year in the past 4 weeks. So you sort of set those aside and say those are the not real cyclical areas. Some of the others that are cyclical, like chemicals and petroleum, you see that up 3%. That's really a function of stronger energy industry, our competitive advantage in the United States with having lower natural gas prices. And then the one that stands out to me is this metallic ores and minerals, up a total of 11% year over year. And so to me, that's really evidence that the industrial economy is growing pretty nicely. You wouldn't see that otherwise. And really, that's true for most of the segments that AAR breaks down the rail carload volume. Maybe the one exception is forest products. For the primary forest products component. Actually, the total forest products up about 5% year over year, but that primary forest products, which is the most leading indicator, those are logs that would be turned into lumber. That's down about 4.5% year over year, which is what you would expect. Maybe you'd expect it even worse, given the housing starts have been a drag. So, rail carloads for the most part, positive, and it has been for the last several weeks. It's been a positive surprise this year for the railroads. We know going into the year, they really were not expecting very much in terms of volume. And then rail intermodal, that's been positive too. That 8% year over year, I think really was better than people were anticipating. And a lot of that's been concentrated in the domestic intermodal segment. And when we look at the domestic intermodal volume in Sonar, it's really showing volume at this time of year that's really typically would be much more consistent with what you would see during the peak season. Let's call it October or November.
Okay, so I want to ask more about the forest products, because we talked about it last week and we're wondering if it was just a blip that it was showing up. So tell me again, there's certainly some context and some detail to that primary forest products versus forest products as a whole. What's up, what's down? The reason it surprised me is because I was thinking it was more like building supplies and wondering what they would be using logs for. So dig into that a bit more. You mentioned it, but there was a whole lot of data and everything that you just went through.
Yeah, so the AAR segments forest products in 3 different ways. I mean, they do primary forest products, which is those logs. Those are the components that's down 4.5% year over year. Lumber and wood products, it's actually up 9% year over year. And that's a little bit more of a function of real time building. So those could be completing projects that had already been started before the housing market started to slow down a little bit. I mean, I do think the housing market is slowing down. The houses are taking longer to sell. I want to say the number of days that average house is taking to sell is up, 5, 6, 7 days versus where it was this time last year. And so that's discouraging the construction of new houses. And so when you look at kind of that upstream component of forest products, is really the logs, which would then be turned into the lumber. And so I like to look at that on that segmented basis. And the one I consider to be more forward-looking is the log, and that's the component that's down 4.5% year over year.
Do you think that some of that could be up because it's getting put on the rail because there's like zero flatbed capacity available anywhere?
That could be as well. Yeah, I mean, it is a slower mode than having on flatbed, but you could be seeing some of that.
Interesting. What do you think the broader trend is telling us overall about freight demand? I mean, you mentioned intermodal is up. Most carload segments are up.
Mm-hmm.
Is that really
in
line with the full trend?
Yeah, I mean, if I were just to look at this, my assessment of the economy is that it's strong. All things considered. So to me, there's all the consumer sentiment data about how people are the most pessimistic they've ever been. It just, you don't see that reflected in the traffic, like intermodal being up 8% year over year. I mean, that's typically a function of how the consumer is feeling. That's what goes into that is a lot of consumer packaged goods. It's also a lot of retail freight. And this is moving volumes that you would typically see later in the year when people are spending the most, and lots of traffic coming off of the docks. So that has not been as big of a tailwind either. So I think some of these past months, March and April, have been some of the best March and April for at least domestic intermodal they've ever seen. So to me, you kind of look at this and you say, well, the economy is moving along, maybe with particular strength in the industrial economy, anything that's metal bending, those type of things. And but yeah, not a lot of red on this chart when I look at the AAR data, other than coal, and coal is usually red.
That's most definitely. Now, Mike, talk to me a little bit about, obviously, our breaking news with Amazon, and of course, breaking in even more, so the LTL space. Initial thoughts from you, Mike. How do you feel about this? And I guess, is it going to work? How should competitors feel? Give us the whole nine about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think LTL, I mean, I came from Wall Street, was an analyst at Stifel, and the LTL is a sector that analysts follow really closely because there's a lot of liquidity there in those stocks. And it is one that you can kind of look at this on the surface and say that's a concern. I mean, one of the things you hear again and again at the LTL companies is that there has not been a new entrant in the LTL space in decades. Well, that's no longer true with Amazon. And so it is something that these companies are going to have to be wary of. But at the same time, I mean, XPO and FedEx Freight, which just spun off at the beginning of this month, have really redoubled their efforts to attract new customers. I think they're going after the same customers that Amazon could potentially be going after. They're trying to LTL is traditionally moves a lot of industrial freight. Something like 60% of the freight is industrial, but those companies are targeting companies in healthcare, pharma, government, small businesses, various other sectors that are going to be more stable to diversify that sector. And so it seems like a lot of those same shippers are going to get aggressive calls from salesmen in XPO, FedEx Freight, maybe now Amazon, although it does seem like a lot of Amazon going into that space seemed to be customer driven. They were happy with the way things were going when they were using for Amazon, when they were selling into Amazon, and now they want to use it for other things, selling into other retailers as well. But yeah, it's definitely Amazon making a lot of news in this space. It seems like every month there's some big announcement from them.
Told you, isn't he a genius?
He's very well spoken. I mean, he is killing right now.
All right, well, we're hopping around and asking about different modes. One of the other headlines this morning was about intermodal peak season for imports, right? For FEUs coming in 40 foot to both ports, but primarily to the West Coast, Trans-Pacific. What are your thoughts on that, with June being a peak when July was expected to be a peak? I think I read that they expect it to remain strong until September.
Yeah, so the import volume has been a little low. I mean, it's hard to look at that on a year-over-year basis because there was so much noise and all the data last year from the tariffs. Up until the last several weeks, the imports were a little bit low, which was why the international intermodal volume was, let's say, flat when the domestic intermodal was up double digits. Now the international is starting to catch up. So you're seeing, like you said, I mean, more imports coming through the West Coast ports. It does seem like the inventory levels overall had gotten to be a little bit low. And it seems like a lot of companies are trying to replenish those inventory levels ahead of peak season. So there's not a scramble right at the end of peak season. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with ocean shipping. I mean, the rates there have been kind of all over the place. I mean, some of these ocean rates of $6,000 a box, I mean, those have been way up, even though the ocean market should, in theory, be structurally oversupplied. So I think there's a lot more uncertainty in ocean shipping, and I think it makes sense to the extent the shipper can to move it in a little early.
Yeah, pull aheads with not knowing exactly what's coming next with tariffs and new tariffs rolling out regularly, and then certainly that's being impacted in those rates. So now I've got to ask about the overall freight market. So now if we see the coasts continue to tighten, which has historically always been the case, but this cycle has been different, with really the middle of the country driving the demand increase. You think what's going to happen? You think it's going to just keep getting tighter and tighter now the coasts pop and we're really going to be in a new level of tender rejections?
Yeah, I think so. I think usually 4th of July, you see that big spike. Sometimes it's the biggest spike for the year for tender rejections outside of the crunch right alongside the holidays. And I think that's, likely to happen again. I mean, usually the tender rejections soften a little bit in June before peaking right at the end of June. Haven't seen that at all. And so it's now, it doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of relief valves. I do think there's going to be plenty of freight for the intermodal companies to move. I mean, that's one alternative to get it from the port regions to the interior of the country, as long as the freight is not, super time sensitive and it's in a corridor where there's a lot of intermodal volume that can go on the rail intermodal. There's still capacity from those rail intermodal companies in terms of the number of containers. Been, a lot of collaboration between the railroads as well. So I do think that's going to be one relief valve, but then, sort of getting back to, LTL. I mean, if it's too tight on the truckload, you might see shippers break up shipments and use more LTL. So I think, certainly the stock market seems to be anticipating that the LTL sector is going to be a huge beneficiary of the tight freight market in addition to truckload. There's a lag there that's usually 6 months or 9 months, but we sort of checks watch. It was about 6 months ago where the truckload industry started to get tight in January. So it could really see a lot of tightness across the board.
Mike, you know exactly where I was going there. I was going to ask, with truckload capacity continuing to tighten, can we talk about intermodal cost savings and what some of the Sonar data is showing for Transcon versus maybe East Coast?
For sure. Yeah, we have some nice intermodal savings indexes by lane. We have those published in Sonar in 65 lanes. We also have an index of the transcontinental head haul lanes outbound of Los Angeles. And those are showing about a 30% savings if you're using intermodal versus truckload when you include the fact that fuel surcharges are lower in intermodal, about half the fuel surcharge. When it comes to local east, those are relatively attractive as well. I define local east as let's say from Chicago to points eastward. You have the savings there, about 18% when you include fuel. So that sector is a little bit more competitive with truck, maybe a lot more competitive with truck. But there it is on the screen. So that red line that's showing 30.5% savings, that's the transcontinental eastbound lanes outbound of Los Angeles, and then the white lane is the local east lanes. Those are competitive with truckload, and 18.9%. It's a lot less than 30%, but still, look how much that's risen since last year when it was down at 10%. Some of that is, higher average truckload contract rate. Some of that is also fuel, with fuel costing more on the highway.
Now, I have a question for you because, first off, two questions. Number one, you haven't been on What the Truck yet, and I'm a bit offended, but it's okay. We'll get that out.
I haven't been invited. I haven't been invited since the Dooner days, and those seemed like a long time ago.
They seem like a long time ago, but also, I guess my question for you is, what's the one thing that's keeping you, not necessarily up at night, but just has you kind of a bit just not perplexed, but just aware of in the space right now?
Yeah, I think consumer sentiment. The consumer sentiment is kind of a concern now. There's been a big divergence between consumer sentiment and consumer spending, but I do see evidence of kind of the average person struggling. You see things like the credit card balance is $1.25 trillion. That's crazy. There's more delinquencies in terms of auto payments and those things. The amount that's being stretched out for loans for autos is at a record level. We do see auto sales being pretty poor, even though it's not really showing up in the rail traffic for some reason. I don't know if those are inventories building at the dealer lots. And then housing. I think housing could be weak for some time unless something dramatically happens there with either sellers getting anxious that they are cutting the prices or interest rates, coming down, but that leads to less, volume of anything from appliances to furniture to various other types of projects that just there's a lot of spending associated with existing homes in addition to new homes. So those are drags on the economy. And I just think the industrial economy is so strong that we're not feeling it as much as you normally would.
Yeah. All right. Last question, Mike, that I have. We've talked a lot about the proposed UP-NS merger, but we haven't gotten your take on it yet. So what are you thinking?
I'm thinking it's going to be a long process. I think we're still going to not know until probably the end of next year. I think the main point of contention is whether or not that enhances competition in the industry. That's one of the primary ways that the STB is going to evaluate it. I do think UP and NS make a good case that enhances competition, yes, versus the highway, but then also against the other railroads. And I think the fact that the other railroads, as being BNSF and CSX, have redoubled their efforts to partner with each other to expand intermodal services, I think that's evidence that there's going to be an enhancement of competition for some of that transcontinental freight. So it's going to be interesting to see what types of concessions are going to be required by the STB. And clearly the STB is looking at this very closely, and they want just a tremendous amount of information. I mean, they want just not only what UP and NS are thinking about this, but they want the expectations of what UP and NS think is going to, the responses they're expecting from all the others in the industry. Well, it seems like it's hard to anticipate the others' responses. It's almost be, a question for the others. But to me, I think as far as transcontinental freight is concerned, I mean, I think you can make the argument it does enhance, competition. But I am mindful of the counter argument, which is maybe it reduces the number of routings if you're talking about something that's effectively going from one part of the coast to the other. It's more difficult to change railroads and have as many routing options, let's say, from rail cars that are interchanged in Chicago.
Yep, that makes a ton of sense. And I agree with you that I think it'll be really interesting to watch how BNSF and CSX deal with this and work to partner to have a response to this potential too. All right, Mike, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your genius with us. We are lucky enough to have Mike appearing again tomorrow on the second half of FreightWaves Today, talking Freightonomics with Zach Strickland. So we will absolutely look forward to that.
Gotta tune in for that. That's going to be fantastic. Mike was wonderful. That was awesome.
I know. I wasn't kidding when I say, I look forward to the conversations I have with him. We'll do a check-in every once in a while. And then certainly when I have something I need to brainstorm or talking through, he writes a lot of really great content for Sonar as well.
We're going to have to get that more out into the hands of the public. We can't hide Mike Baudendistel anymore. We can't do that.
Yes, he is great. All right, well, I mean, it's been a pretty great show, Malcolm. Thank you for sitting in and doing the whole day with me.
Listen, I appreciate it. I'm not Craig Fuller, but guess what? I'll still pack a punch every now and then.
I think we did just fine.
Yeah, I think it was great. I think there was a lot of great conversations. Of course, I think if I just had to obviously talk about my favorite one, it was the Supreme Court ruling. Just given my background and my nature, I thought Andy did a wonderful job. And yeah, it's just to see how fast this stuff is moving every single day, and just to hear the different takes from different people. That's why I think this show is cool in comparison to What the Truck, because yes, we have a good time on What the Truck. I like to say that FreightWaves is like an airport. What the Truck is kind of more so like a Spirit or an Allegiant. It's a fun time, but this is Delta, and I think you get some real serious conversations, and you get folks that are able to really speak to it, that are making the decisions on a daily basis. So some great overall conversation.
I was thinking that What the Truck is more like the sports bar in the airport lounge.
For sure.
And FreightWaves Today is more like the business center.
This is definitely the Sky Lounge, right? And I think that you're going to have the sports bar with myself and Michael Vincent. I think that is a great analogy.
I want to come to the sports bar sometimes.
And sometimes I want to be in the Sky Lounge, Sometimes you get tired of chicken wings and beer after a while. I don't, but somebody may, you never know. So.
Well, I will tell you, I'm learning stuff every day in the show. So I hope our viewers are too. We've had such great guests. I absolutely feel like I have learned so much about the rest of the supply chain further than what I just did. I love the PCS software conversation this morning.
PCS was great as well, yeah.
This afternoon.
It feels like this morning.
Noon.
I got you.
And thinking about some of the really cool stuff that they're doing as, the industry continues to transform and evolve, and loved hearing that the people doing it were those who really actually understand our industry and who are providing those services. So that was cool. I think domain expertise is always a huge value.
Definitely. Julie, my mom always used to say, you know what, Malcolm, what's better than today?
Tomorrow. Well, tomorrow we have a great show. We have Brandon Blake, business development at IGT Logistics, former Green Bay, or another guy from Green Bay. So he and I can chat a little bit, maybe either about the Packers or what's going on in Green Bay. Really looking forward to hearing from him. And David Warwick, Overhaul's EVP of Strategy and former head of Global Supply Chain for Microsoft. And then again, the back half of the show, FreightWaves Today, will be featuring Freightonomics with Mike Baudendistel and Zach Strickland. We're going to continue to ask you guys to interact with us on social media. Remember, #FW Today. We want to hear from you on LinkedIn and on X. We've gotten some really good comments on LinkedIn specifically. I know you and Craig live in the X world a little bit more.
Yes.
I live on LinkedIn a little bit more. But hearing that a lot of our viewers are putting the show up on the TVs in their offices throughout lunch breaks
Just
from
let
12
us
to
sit.
2 so that anyone on the floor can get access and listen as they're either taking their lunch break or while they're working through the day. And I think that's such a great idea, and hope all of you guys will do that.
Hope they do too. Thank you so much for having me again. I really appreciate it, Julie.
Thank you, Malcolm. We'll be back tomorrow.
Imagine a world where your freight moves as fast as a digital pulse.